Hello, welcome to the training webinar for today. I'm Dale Franks. I think we're recording. It says we are. So hopefully this will be on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, hi. Some administrivia to begin. This is going to be the last training webinar for a week or so. I am going to be on vacation next week. So there's no training webinar next week. I don't know why I introduced it that way. That seems overly tendentious. There's no webinar next week. Next Thursday, I'm going to be on vacation, so I'm not going to be here. So there's that. Also, interesting historical fact, today is July 2nd, which is the actual independence date of the United States. This is the date on which Congress formally adopted the Resolution on Independence. John Adams wrote that night that July 2nd will be forever remembered by our posterity. We don't. We only remember the date on which they signed and released the Declaration of Independence, which is 2 days hence on July 4th. So today we're going to talk about calendar knowledge views. Not something we talk a lot about. In fact, it's almost kind of a, without actually being hidden, it's one of those hidden little gems that exist in the knowledge view functionality. It does require some specificity on how it is set up, and there are also two modes in which it works, and we are going to talk about the more complex mode today. Now, I've got an application that we're going to cover in excruciating detail to show how the calendar knowledge view is set up and how it works. If we have some time later, I will go ahead and try to whip up one from scratch for us at the end of the webinar, but it just depends on how long it's going to take me to get through the application that I've pre-built so that we can fully understand what the configuration needs to be to produce a calendar knowledge view. So with that in mind, I will share my screen and we will proceed. So here is one of the two calendar knowledge views that we can display based on the data that I have. Now, this one is taking individual bits of the data that I have and making individual little appointments on the calendar. So for example, let's take this example here. Here's a trip for Rick Robb from San Diego to San Francisco. Now, it goes from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., and then there is a corresponding entry on Wednesday from 12 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday. And these are showing up as two separate events. Now, this is an artifact of the way that I have it set up. However, I will say that if you're using a calendar knowledge view to show a schedule, like a schedule for conference room reservations or something, this is probably the way that you want to show it. However, travel is a little more complicated than that. It is not the case that this is a 4-hour or 3-hour appointment on Monday and then another 3.5-hour appointment on Wednesday. It is in fact one long appointment. And in most cases, for something like travel, I would want to show it that way. So there is an alternate way of showing this in a calendar knowledge view, which is encapsulated here in this knowledge view. I just want to note really quickly, we are seeing a grid. That's because that's how I have chosen to show it for now. We'll have to click the calendar icon to show the calendar knowledge view, but now we see something a little bit different. If we look at Rob's trip, okay, it starts at 9 a.m. and it goes the entire day. Oh, and look, it's the entire day on Tuesday, and then it goes all the way to 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday. Similarly, the trip for Barb and Diana are also overnight trips where they're staying overnight on Thursday and returning on the third day of their journey. So this sort of concatenates the entire trip, but there are some hoops that we have to jump through to make this happen. So a couple of things about the knowledge view itself and about what makes a calendar knowledge view work. So let's go back to this first calendar knowledge view. And while we're here, let me just point out, these are set to be displayed in grid on the Configure tab, which means the default view for the calendar knowledge view with this configuration is to display the knowledge view grid, just like a normal knowledge view. Now, I don't have to do that. I can just set it for calendar display so that whenever it displays, it actually just displays the calendar. And if I just update and run it from here with that setting, the calendar immediately appears. You never have to see the entire knowledge view with the traditional grid format. It just goes straight to the calendar. So something to keep in mind when you're configuring it is, do you actually want it to show the calendar when it runs, or do you want to show the grid and give the option of seeing the calendar in the knowledge view? I think that the most likely solution that you want if you're going to have a calendar knowledge view is to actually display the calendar. So you do have to be sure to go to the Configure tab and set the knowledge view results property to calendar so that it just automatically shows the calendar. I think that's probably the vast majority of actual implementations that you'll want to display to users. What makes the calendar K-view work is on the calendar tab of the knowledge view. I must have 3 properties to make a calendar work. So, well, that's simple enough. I need a subject, something that gets displayed, as we can see in the knowledge view. If I go ahead and update and run it again, that's this text that we're seeing here, that trip 7, didn't mean to click on it. Trip 76 for Rick Robb, leg 1 from San Diego to San Francisco. So that is the text that I have configured to show for that knowledge view. And it comes from the name column. So these 3 properties and this color property, which is a 4th property, but it is completely optional. But I have to have these 3 properties. I have to have a name that gets displayed in the calendar. I have to have a start date that gets displayed, and I have to have an end date that gets displayed. Now, I've thrown in some special sauce here, and I've thrown in a color. And as you can see, each of the individuals who undertake some form of travel, for example, Diana is moving around quite a lot, as you can see, and Diana has this peach color. So Diana shows up quite a lot, doing quite a lot of different things. I am shown up here in this teal color, and Rick Robb, of course, gets this purplish, this light purple color. And I've added that. We'll also go over some different ways. Well, we'll go over at least one way of adding a color, because it's the way that I've implemented. If, in fact, I have these 3 fields, they must be columns in the knowledge view, then I will automatically be able to create a calendar knowledge view if I want. If I don't configure this tab, then there will be no calendar knowledge view. It will just show up as a normal knowledge view with the normal data. So I must configure this tab, and I must configure these 3 properties here for the name, the start date, and the end date in order to make it work as a sensible calendar that people can look at. Now, we have a couple of options about how we want to display the calendar. For example, the initial calendar view, we can show it as days, weeks, or month. Days are sort of the normal calendar view. There is also a timeline view that we can use to display the calendar. I'm not a super fan of the calendar view, or the timeline view, but you can sort of see, well, it's showing me week. I should probably show days at this point. Well, no, I think the timeline is only going to show it to me that way. So you can see when my trips start and then when the trips end. Not a big fan of the timeline view, although I suppose if you're doing multiple things in a day, it might be useful. However, it is at least a view that is available to you. I think the default view, of course, is the week view, and that's probably the one that you'll want to see most. Also, you have an initial calendar view date. Now, if you don't fill this in, what it will do is show you the current week by default, but you can, of course, set this to show some other time or date other than the current week. So, for example, you could take the current date and add 14 days to it, in which case it would show you what was happening 2 weeks hence. So you can sort of show it ahead or show it behind. Normally, you don't want to do that. Normally, you want to see the current week for looking at the calendar. So you generally just don't have to fill this out. I haven't filled it out. It will just default to whatever the current week is. And I think in most use cases, that is what you want. Now, as I said, to fill out any of these properties, especially these three, which are really the required ones, but I have all four of them configured, these have to be columns in your knowledge view. All of these are form field columns that I've created in the knowledge view. So I have the name, the trip leg start, the trip leg end, and the color. The other thing the knowledge view does, just like if I was to run this knowledge view as a regular knowledge view, which it is not, it's set for calendar. So let's go and look at the other one. Well, I guess this one works just fine. Each of the calendar items are clickable, so we can actually go see their source date. So it doesn't matter which one we're looking at, it's all the same. It works all the same. If I click on that trip for Rick Rob, I see the form that I used to create the calendar for Rick Rob. So we're going to look at that form and figure out how this has to be configured. Now, as I mentioned a few moments ago, I have two different views of this calendar. I have this view here. Let's take a look at what we're looking at. Let's look at Rick Rob's form here. So only the top section right now is relevant to this particular knowledge view. So I have two legs to this trip. So I'm departing from San Diego to San Francisco, and then on Wednesday, traveling from San Francisco back to San Diego. So I have two legs for my trip. So clicking on either one of these two legs will open the form that we are seeing now. And so these are the form fields: my departure time, my arrival time, and of course the name that gets concatenated from the user and the trip number and all of that, which is, by the way, the form name, which you can see right up here at the top, trip number 76 for Rick Rob, et cetera, et cetera. These two rows in this array are creating these two items in my calendar, because it is an array, and whenever you use a knowledge view to return arrays, each array row gets returned as a separate record. Now that's nice for me because it enables me to catalog both the start and end legs of the trip. Of course, arrays can also be concatenated, which brings us to this second K-view. We'll go back here and look at the calendar, which if I click on Rick again, obviously it just pops open in the same form. But notice this has been concatenated. That means we have to look at the bottom of the form. We have all of this concatenation stuff here, which requires a little bit of wizardry to concatenate the two array rows into a single value that can make a calendar appointment that stretches from 9 a.m. on Monday to 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday. So we'll now have to go and take a look at how that is done by looking at the design of our form. So let's go to our calendar form and look at what we've done. The first thing I want to point out is that I'm using an array on this form. There are really only two ways that you can implement the calendar array functionality. One of the ways is not to use an array at all. If I am doing, let's say, a single appointment to reserve a room, I'm not going to reserve that room usually on a recurring basis. I just need to set aside some time to have that room. Let's say it's a classroom or something like that. Okay, great. I don't need an array to do that. I mean, I already know who's going to be reserving it. I already have a reservation number, or in this case, a trip number that are outside of the array. So I don't necessarily need to have my time, in this case, the departure and the arrival time. I don't necessarily need to have them inside an array because I'm only making one reservation. The array is the more complicated way of doing it. And in fact, if you are trying to show a calendar for something like travel based off of a travel requisition form, my experience, both in working for the Department of Defense and also working in the private sector, is that anytime that you fill out a trip report, a travel report, you need to fill out every leg of that travel. So if you're just going to one city, the travel report almost always requires that you put the travel time of going there. There may be a second row, which is the time that I spent at the location, and then a third row, which specifies the start and end of my travel for the third day, so that we have a full itinerary. So if you're doing something like travel, you almost have to put it in an array in order to make sense of it. The problem is that with an array, each row of your array is going to produce a full row in the knowledge view. So if I have 3 rows, or in the case of the trip that we saw for Rick Robb, I have at least 2 rows. If I have 2 rows in that array, that is going to be 2 rows in the knowledge view in most cases. Now, for the first knowledge view, that's not a problem. I want there to be 2 rows because I want to record each of the individual legs to get the actual travel time. And that's what my first calendar K view does. It shows me the granular look at all of the individual items in each array row. For the second calendar K view that shows me the entire period of travel, I'm going to need to concatenate that array. The easiest way to do that is to do it here on this form. So let's look at the form field by field, see how we have composed it so that we get the data that we want directly out of the form for the array. So I have my traveler, so I have to be able to identify who traveled for this particular trip. I have the submission date. This is auto-submitted, as we always do, with the form submit date as its default value. For the trip number, I have also done the same thing for the trip number. I have just set a sequence number for trips. So every time I fill out the form, in fact, every time I open the form, it burns a sequence number because it's a default value for that trip. Okay, fine. Currently, the only field we really care about so far is our traveler field. But now we get to the fields that start creating our calendar. This is an array, so at the very top of the table, I have array column controls. So each one of these top controls is an array column control. So let's take a look at the controls in the array itself. The first control is my departure location. It is just a text box that allows me to put in the name of the city or the city and state, whatever the convention is. So this is my field. It is called departure location. So this is my array field. The second field I have is a date time picker, and I have had to do it via system variable. And the reason I've had to do it via system variable, and let's pop open Visual Studio Code so we can take a closer look at the syntax I put in that field in a format that's a little bit easier for us to read. So it is a date time picker control. I have to use the system variable to make this work because I have decided that I want a custom interval and a custom start and end time. The custom start and end time and the interval require that I not use the UI control. The UI control for the date time picker, which is right there, the date picker, or right there on the toolbar itself. You can make this control a date time picker. However, it's going to show you the entire 24-hour day, and it is only going to break it down into 1 hour increments. Since I want to use custom increments of half an hour, and I want to have just a business hours only view. So it's only going to show me from 8 to 5 p.m. Or I'm sorry, from 8 to 8 p.m. I am going to need to customize this. And the only way to customize this is via the use of the date time control tag. So what I've done is I have just thrown in a system variable control, and I've put in the syntax for the date time control with my custom interval start and end dates, and have just called it the departure time. The important thing to remember when you're using the control tag, it is a date time control, good so far, but you must put in a name, just like any other control. This name has to be unique. It has to be less than 64 characters. It can't use any special characters other than underscores or the dash character. Other than that, it's all either letters and or numbers for that field. So this field is named departure time. So whenever you save the form, this will be saved as the departure time field for the form. I've merely replicated that with the remaining two fields here. I've got my destination field and then my arrival time field here, which again is a form control tag. I have the add trip button. That's just my array add row control. I have this event button, which is something we can ignore because the only reason I put it on there was because I just wanted to invoke an event when I was playing around down here. So we can forget that. And then we have the remove last. Again, this is an array control, which when I click it will remove the last field in the trip array. This is fine for just producing our very first calendar K-view, the one that shows me the individual items. I don't really need to do any more configuration than I've already done. I do however, have to do some tricksy stuff down here because I need to go ahead and concatenate those fields that I'm creating in the array to create custom values here that I can show in my concatenated K-view. And at this point, I'm kind of wishing I could show you 4 things at once. I can't, but what I can do is show you one of the form instances. So let's do this. Let me open up, I believe it is trip 70 for Diana. It is. We're going to use this as our source form. And before we go back and look at the actual fields here, let me just get this slightly out of the way. We'll go back to my form and go back to the design view. And we'll take a look at these form fields and the actual form when it runs as an instance. So we're cool up here, right? We've got our traveler, our submitted date, trip number. We've got the three legs of our trip: Oceanside to Pasadena, Pasadena to Point Mugu, and Point Mugu back to Oceanside. So I'm actually going to two destinations on this trip, or at least Diana is. So what I need to be able to do is concatenate that departure time to that arrival time, because I actually have three rows here, and I really only want when my trip started and when my trip ended. So that's what these two fields down here, these two date fields, do. I have my trip start and my trip end field, and that is to be differentiated between departure time and arrival time. So I'm going to need a set form data, which we're going to look at in a minute, to actually build all of these fields, and I'm going to have to use some system variable syntax to make all of this happen. The next field down is my trip depart loc field. So this is the departure location. Let's go through the fields real quick so that we can see what they are. This is my trip destination location field. This is destination 2. I'll explain what this is here in a minute. We'll see it on the form. Then I have destination 3 and the color field. And finally, I have a calculated field down here, which gives me the number of rows in my array minus the last field. And we'll see why that is important here. So let's take a look at the data that we're seeing on our form. So the first thing I'm seeing here is Oceanside. Okay, that's my departure location. So great. So that is my trip departure location field. And then I have these three destination fields here. Largely, they're here for illustrative purposes, because one of them I am just not using. However, I have got this field here. It shows me Pasadena and Point Mugu. All right, well, I am going to Pasadena. I am going to Point Mugu. But where's Oceanside? It's missing there. Now, it's not missing in this third field. This third field is showing me Oceanside, so that's all three of my destinations. But I have a reason for doing this, because my trip is to Pasadena and Point Mugu. I'm not going to be staying in Point Mugu permanently, so I think we can reasonably assume that I am going to be returning to Oceanside at some point in the future. So there's no reason to list Oceanside as a destination. But if we were just reading the arrival location in the array itself, it would return all three values: Pasadena, Point Mugu, and Oceanside. I don't want to do that, so I need to get rid of Oceanside somehow. We'll go and look at how that was done in a second. My final destination is Point Mugu. The color is blanched almond, and the number of rows in the array -1 is going to be 2. Most of these are all here for a reason. Let's start with the color, because that one's the easiest one to explain. I have a business rule called Calendar Colors Webinar. And it is connected to my calendar form, obviously, because that's where I want to get my data from. I'm going to be evaluating a form field, and the form field I am evaluating is the traveler form field right here. So I've set this business rule to first value matching condition. It could conceivably be either first value or list of values, because all of my conditions are mutually exclusive. Only one of these can possibly be true. So it doesn't really matter which one I select, although technically the correct selection is first value matching condition, because I only want to return one value. And so what I've created is a condition. So based on who the traveler is, it is going to return a value. In this case, the value it's going to return is a string, And in this particular case, the string that I have created is just an HTML named color. So powder blue, aquamarine, blanched almond, and thistle, those are all four of those colors are named HTML colors. Technically, I could return the hexadecimal color if I wanted to, um, but it's just easier and easier to understand if I just choose the named color, and that's what I've chosen for this. So that's how I get my value in this color field. It just takes whoever the traveler is and returns the appropriate color for my field. Now, why do I have these fields down here? Well, remember, I want to concatenate my array. It's easier for me to do it in the form because I need to do some tricky things to create the values that go into these form fields. And the way I do that is through a set form data action. So we have to go back to my calendar form and we have to go to the set form data where I am making system variables do a lot of work. So my first field, and let me move this over here so we can sort of align them together. It won't be perfect, but it'll be close. So my first field is my trip start field, which I want to change to, and I'm not sure if we can see this. So I'm going to go ahead and paste those values here as we go. So the first thing I need to take is the departure time. And remember, we are inside an array, so I don't want to return the entire value set of the departure time field. I only want to return one value, and that is the value in row number 1. So I know the actual time that my full trip starts, because remember, what we're trying to do is take these 3 rows that constitute a trip, and I need to make a single row that takes the entire trip from start to finish. So my departure time will be the departure time for row number 1, which of course is 10:30 in the morning on July the 1st. For my trip end, I have this syntax. I need the arrival time, but I got to specify the row number. Now, what I don't want is any of the earlier rows in there. I need to have the very last arrival time when my trip ended completely. And that is this value right here, 7:03 at 5 o'clock p.m. Okay, great. So to get that, I just need to pull the last row for arrival time. Now, the name of the array is trip array. Arrays have a value. That value is the number of rows in the array. So if I go row num equals, and then I use the system variable, the form field system variable to return the value of trip array, it will return the value of 3, which happily is the 3rd row, and the value of arrival time in the 3rd row is right there. So, okay, great. I can now get my very first value when my trip starts, and I can get my second value when my trip ends. Happy so far. Let's go down here to this value here for my departure location. Again, very simple to do using system variables. In this case, I want the departure location from row number 1 because I'm obviously leaving from Oceanside and going to somewhere else. So where am I going? Well, I've got a couple of different choices for how I want to display it. For the next field, and this is my preferred method of displaying it, this is where a little trickery is going to come in. I'm going to need to fix up my destination field, because remember, my destination field by default will be Pasadena, Point Mugu, and Oceanside. Okay, I'm departing from Oceanside. So we're going to take it as a given that I'm returning to Oceanside. Where did I go while I was gone? Well, I went to Pasadena and Point Mugu. So the way that I can derive that is to get rid of the third value in the destination field, Oceanside, so that it doesn't print. What I want is a record of a trip that goes from Oceanside, and then the destinations are Pasadena and Point Mugu because I went to both of those destinations. So I need to strip out the very third row of my array for the destination field. So I'm going to use pattern replace. So what I'm looking for, because it is a comma separated field, is I am looking for this value right here. So basically what I'm saying is I want you to look at the destination field and find the value from row number trip array, which in this case is going to be 3. I want you to find that third value, whatever it is. In our case, it would be comma Oceanside. So this system variable here, this pattern will actually, when it runs, return comma, well, this will return Oceanside, but I also have the comma and the space here. So technically it's going to return comma space Oceanside. I want to get rid of comma space Oceanside. I want it to end at Point Mugu. So I'm going to look for this pattern, comma space Oceanside, in this case is what the pattern will return, and I'm going to replace it with nothing. So in effect, what I'm going to do is strip out the third destination of Oceanside from this from this reading. Again, as I said, there's multiple ways I can do it. The second way of doing it is just using the system variable for the destination field. It will return Pasadena, Point Mugu, and Oceanside. So fine, we'll accept that. If it's okay to have all 3, then we're fine. And destination 3, let's say I don't care about the intermediate destination. So let's go back over here. Let me paste this in. And where's the form? That's what I want to show you, is the form. So note that this is showing me Point Mugu. What I'm doing is the alternate way of showing my destination. So first way, Pasadena, Point Mugu. The second way, all 3. And let's say I only want to show my starting point, Oceanside, and wherever it is I finally ended up, however many legs that there were on the trip, I don't care. I just need to know where I'm returning from ultimately. And ultimately, I'm returning from Point Mugu. So if I just want my trip to be, Oceanside to Point Mugu, yes, I did go to Pasadena at some point in there, but I don't care. Ultimately, I traveled all the way to Point Mugu and back. Okay, fine, I can do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the departure location from, again, the third row, because I'm returning trip array here, which will always return 3 in this case. So I'm just going to pull my third departure location, and that is Point Mugu. So I can always just say, great, I'm going from Oceanside to Point Mugu and back. It all depends on what level of detail that you want to use to concatenate this array to show where your trip is going. However you want to do it, this now gives us 3 different choices of how we want to display the text of our the text in our knowledge view. We can just give ourselves the choice here. Finally, I've got my blanched almond field. We've already talked about how we got that. And then here I have my number of rows. I actually thought I had used that somewhere when I was looking it over yesterday. The reason why I have this particular field in here is the other way that I can do this if I want to, although it is a little less convenient. And I have to remember what I called this field, and I don't. So I'm going to have to go look at it. Penultimate row is what I called it. I'm going to need that here. Here's what I could also do. I used my departure location. So I used Point Mugu as my departure location in this particular setup. What I could do, however, is this. Departure location row. Oh, it wouldn't be departure location. Sorry, my fault. Arrival location. Row num equals penultimate row. Because I have 3 rows in my array, this calculation control, penultimate row, will take the number of rows I have in the array and minus 1 from it. So if I have 3 rows in my array, this row will return, or this control will return 2. So I can, instead of using the Point Mugu departure location from here in row 3, which I did in the first instance, I can also do this, which is an extra hoop to jump through, but may be necessary depending on how your system is set up. Sometimes you don't have a departure location, you only have destination locations, in which case, it gets a little trickier to do this. So if it does get a little trickier to do that on your little travel form, I can also pull Point Mugu from row 2. And the reason I can do that is because I built this calculation row right here on the bottom to tell me what the second to the last row in the array always is. So I always have the ability, without fail, to grab the first, second, and penultimate row anytime that I'm using an array. Now, the reason I'm going through this hoop is that I want to do my concatenation here on the form. As I show up here, this section is hidden in prod. You wouldn't see this on a production form that you had created. You would just hide this away from the user. But hiding the form doesn't mean that the form controls don't exist and that we can't set them. It just means they don't show up for the end user. So it gives me a convenient way of doing the concatenation here. Could I do this, all of this stuff that I've done here, could I do this in the knowledge view itself? Yes, technically I could. We could use all of these system variables in the knowledge view itself. There is an advantage to doing them in the form, because then all I have to do is pass the form field value not only to the form, but also whenever I create subsequent knowledge views, I don't have to reinvent the wheel and reconfigure all of this stuff all the time. If I'm building a report object, again, I don't have to try to reconfigure all of this in a report for a third time. I do it once. It lives in the form. It's hidden away, but the data is available for me. So this is the way that I would do it in a production environment if I was building an application like a travel request form or a travel reimbursement form in this case. Obviously, if you're not using an array, none of this is necessary, so you wouldn't need it. But if you are going to be using an array for your calendar scheduling, it's a good idea to have these fields here. let's look at the knowledge views themselves. So we're going to go to our first calendar K view. Now this actually shows me the arrays. Now I do actually want to go back and reset this back to displayed in grid so that we can actually see the data that this is returning. Now, because we are, and I should probably, it's these trips down here at the bottom that we're concerned about. All the stuff that happens in the end of June and the 1st of July. So everything from basically here on down. These are all of my trips that we are seeing in the calendar. This is the actual data that is being returned. Because this is an array, each array row creates a separate row in our knowledge view. So some of the fields are the same. So there's, trip 70 for Diana. So Diana, blanched almond, blanched almond, blanched almond. Those are the same because they are non-array rows, but obviously my 3 array rows will show up with slightly different data, certainly for my arrival, departure, and destination fields. Also my departure location fields. Those will all be different. So now I have 1 row per array row, so that is 1 record, and each one of these rows constitutes a record that appears in my calendar. So if we're looking for Diana's trip, I didn't mean to click on Diana. It'd be nice to be able to select this without clicking. If I mouse over Diana, though, there is leg 1 of Diana's trip. That is leg 2 of trip 70. And that is leg 3 of trip 70. And if we go back to show our array rows, maybe I should. Nope, I think I better do it by travel. Well, there's no easy way of showing you this because I have some extra travels that I've done in the past. Let's see if we can go back and find Diana's trip again here. There we go. So here's her trip. And I have the name and the form instance name. Let's actually take a look at our columns to see how we've configured our columns, because we're going to be configuring different columns for each of the arrays or for each of the knowledge views. So in the first one, I have the name. Now, what I have done is I have concatenated the name. And I think I went back and actually changed the form. So I am going trip number whatever for Diana, or trip 70 for Diana Stewart, leg 1, which is whatever the row number is. So it's going to go from top to bottom with my array row numbers for leg 1, leg 2, and leg 3 of this trip, from departure location to destination. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky as to what I'm going to choose for the destination field. That's why I have those 3 different methods of getting the destination field. I can show you all of the destinations other than the return. I can show you all of the destinations including the return, or I can show the penultimate destination, which was the last place that my trip stopped at, because I now have those 3 options available to me for determining how I want to use how I want to label my calendar event. I have to label my calendar event with something, or else it's just a colored block on a calendar that doesn't tell me anything. Now, you have to exercise some caution as to how long you want to make the text that you're showing. I think I'm not entirely convinced that I have chosen the best text for this particular implementation, and I'll show you why. I've got like a little 30-minute trip for Dale Franks. So it's basically me going from San Diego to Poway and back. Well, it's only going to be a half-hour little trip. And even though I'm counting it as a trip, if you put too much text, you're going to run into this problem a little more often. Certainly for a half-hour trip, you have very little text that you can throw in there. And as you can see, it kind of overruns the bounds of the half-hour timestamp that I'm showing there. But if I have an hour or longer, this is generally okay, an okay amount of text. It gives me the information that I need. So it shows me the trip number. It tells me who is traveling, tells me what part of the trip it is, and where it went from Oceanside to San Diego. Okay, cool. That works for me. So we're happy with this. Other than these half-hour trips, I probably got a little too much text in there to display. Because I am showing the array data, I'm going to go ahead and just use my regular fields: departure location, departure time, destination, arrival time. None of that matters because I do actually want to show each of the individual legs of the trip. Obviously, the stuff that will be repeated is my trip number, the name, the form instance name, the name that I have configured to make this thing work, and the color. Those are all going to be the same. But that allows me to do this knowledge view. Now, for the concatenated knowledge view, I have the custom fields that I placed on the form. So I've still got my name, which is the same concatenation that I created before. Still have the trip number, still have the traveler, but now my trip start and trip end, which I've renamed trip start instead of destination and arrival location, now uses those custom fields, my trip start and my trip end field. So all of those concatenation fields, this is where they become useful, those ones at the bottom of the form, because those are the fields that I am using to determine what gets displayed in my knowledge view. So when I run this knowledge view, and we look at the calendar of it, since currently both of them are displaying and you know what? I think I do want to display these side by side. So let me add another row here and let me go to training. We'll be able to see both, if not side by side, at least close together. So go to content list. Since it looks like we're doing really good on time. Looks like I'm going to have to make something from scratch after all. So we'll go to calendar K views and no, calendar K views. Nope, we didn't want to go to the calendar K view app. Forgot to pin it. I don't know why. I just find it easier to do it from there. There we go. So now we can see both versions of our knowledge view. So here's Rick's trip, and as you can see, it spans the entire 3-day period. If I click on it, that's fine. It gives me Rick's trip, just as if I click on Diana's trip over here, it will give me that same trip that we've been looking at here, so that we can see the values that we have here. Now, the reason why this Point Mugu field is here is because that's how I have chosen, we talked about in the interest of time or in the interest of space. That's how I chose to display it. Although these are longer trips, so I could use this value here for Pasadena and Point Mugu instead of just, well, I've actually done it wrong here. It looks like this is a trip from Oceanside to Oceanside. and from Oceanside to Oceanside. So I'd probably want to change that for this one. So I want from Pasadena to Point Mugu. So let's go. This is my concatenated one. So that's not the one that I want to see. I want to go. No, actually, it is the one that I want to see because I need to change it. But I forgot the name of the field that I need to change it to. So let's go back and look at my field that is giving me my actual values that I want. That's this field here. So this one, and that is trip dest lock. Great. So I'm going to go back here to calendar view concatenated, and I'm going to go to its columns, destinations, trip depart. I'm going to have to go over here to do this. From trip depart location to trip dest location. I'm trip number. I'm trying to rationalize what it is I'm seeing here. Let me run. So San Diego to Oceanside, Pasadena and Oxnard, San Diego to Pasadena. So this is showing me what I want to see here. What am I seeing on the calendar? San Diego to San Francisco, Oceanside to Oceanside, Oceanside to Oceanside. Why am I seeing that here? Let's go back to my calendar. I've misconfigured something on the calendar. So the column is the name column. So that is what I wanted to see. I should have noticed this yesterday when I was running through here, and I didn't. So trip dest lock is what it is supposed to be showing me. And trip destination location should be showing me Pasadena and Point Mugu. But that's not what it is showing me in the calendar. Let me check the form just to be sure what it is I'm seeing and that I have counted fields correctly. The field that is showing me, okay, so I've got my first, second, my third field is Oceanside. So that's my third field. So that is my trip depart location. And my fourth field should be trip destination location, which should be Pasadena and Point Mugu. So trip dest lock should be that. So if I go back to my calendar K-view concatenated, and my destinations is trip dest lock. Let's see. Okay, so that's the column. That is the name. And when I run it, Las Vegas, well, let's go down here for my trip down here, trip 70 for Diana. It does say Oceanside to Oceanside. So that's what it says, but it should be saying Oceanside to Point Mugu. Now it's working up here, and it is not working down here, and I don't exactly know why. Okay. I do know why. It's because I'm not saving my form data. And so as a result, it is showing me wrong stuff. Because now if I refresh, this was an older, these form instances are from an older version. So here we go, trip 70 for Diana Stewart from Oceanside to Pasadena and Point Mugu. Now, not all of these are going to change, but some of them will. So that's trip number 73, trip number 74. I need to resave the data because I'm seeing the data when the form opens because the system variables are firing, but it's not actually saving the data because I have not hit OK. So I did not misconfigure anything. I just didn't save stuff. So now if we go and look at our calendar, there we go. Trip 70 for Diana Stewart from Oceanside to Pasadena and Point Mugu. It is obviously small there. You can see it better here. Trip 70 for Diana Stewart from Oceanside to Pasadena, comma, Point Mugu. So now I know where people are going. San Diego to San Francisco, Oceanside to San Clemente and Laguna Beach, San Diego to Oceanside, and so forth. So as long as I have the correct data saved in my forms, I see the correct data in my knowledge view, which has all of the stuff that I'm supposed to be seeing. So good, we have fixed that up. All right, perfect. It is 11 o'clock. We have explained this, we explained the knowledge views. So let's just go ahead and rebuild it. Now, so far, we have done it just with the calendar form here using the array, which is, maybe the hardest way of doing it. I think just in the interests of time, we're going to go ahead and replicate this, but we will replicate it without using an array so we can actually show just how simple it is to actually set this up for a normal calendar knowledge view without having to go through the hoops of dealing with an array. So we should be able to do this pretty quickly. We'll just go ahead and create a form definition. I'm not going to create a timeline or anything. Obviously, if you were recording a room reservation, there would probably be a timeline associated with that you would have to worry about. But we're just going to create a simple calendar just using the minimal fields that we need. So we'll just call this simple calendar KView form. And I misspelled it as I am wont to do. So we're going to need 4 simple things to make this work. We're going to need a name. We're going to need a start time, an end time, and we're going to need a color. So let's just go ahead and build that. So we'll just call this the calendar form, and we'll set this as heading 1. And now we'll just add our simple fields. So I should do this all as accessibility standards and stuff like that. But you know what? In the interest of time, I'm just going to use text labels here. So we're going to have our name. We can call this whatever we want. I'm just going to call this the name field. Well, let's call this the event name. So let's call it that, event name. So let's make it look at least moderately normal by just putting it in a column. So we have event name, and we're going to need our start time. Now for this one, we're going to go ahead and keep it simple. What we're going to do is we're just going to use the normal date time picker instead of the custom one. Obviously, if you want a copy of this, I'll be happy to email it to you after the webinar. We're just going to call this start time. And we're going to set this to a date time picker. So it will just allow us to pick, in 1 hour increments. And end time. And we'll drop another one on here, which we'll call end time. And obviously we'll set that to a date time. And then we'll do color. Now, you might think color, who cares? Color is so unimportant. Well, that's not exactly true. By the way, we have a new control here, which I am eager to use for the first time publicly, if I have it. Um, oh, I don't have it. I am so disappointed. We have a new control. It is called the color picker control, and it's cool, and I can use it for a lot of stuff. But unfortunately, I don't have the color picker control here. That would have been cool, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use it. So I guess we'll just throw in a text field, and we'll just, you know, we'll have to set the color manually. Now, as I was starting to say, you might think, who cares about color? Color is not important. I don't care about it. Well, you might not think so, but in reality, especially if you're going to have a lot of events that are going to be filled by a lot of different people, you probably are going to want to use colors. Because what's going to happen if you don't use colors, and the more events you create, what you're going to end up is with this just mass of gray boxes on a calendar that it's really hard to discriminate from. In the real world, you're probably going to want to use a color, and you're probably going to want to use some form of business rule or a color picker, which is what I was going to try to do, but I'm in the wrong version of the product. I get confused sometimes because this is the one that I use for webinars. So this is a training server, as you can see up here at the top. I have another server. It's called the documentation server. The bar at the top is purple instead of blue. And that one has all the new stuff. And I get confused as to which one has which sometime. All right, fine. We have our items. Let's just drop in our button area control. And we don't really need anything else. We have the 4 fields that we need to make this work. Now, we should have a business rule that changes the color. You know what? If I'm going to do that, which I can do, I need to add another field here, which I've already just saved it. So I'm going to have to go back in and add another one. I'm going to need a submitter. Normally, this would be on a field with a default value automatically set. I am not going to do that because I am going to need to pick different users to see different colors. So we're just going to throw a user control on here that we are going to call submitter. In fact, let's not even call it submitter. Let's call it traveler. And the reason I'm calling it traveler is because I'm about to copy and paste this business rule down here in the webinar folder. And I don't want to reconfigure the whole thing all over again. So we're just going to copy that business rule so that we can set the value of our color field based on that business rule. So we're going to call this traveler. And now we're going to save and close our form. And as soon as we save and close it, I'm going to make a copy of this webinar business value. So we'll go to our Calendar KView app, and we will copy, and we will copy it to here. And I want to give it a simple name. So we'll just call this webinar colors. And instead of looking at our calendar form, we will change it to look at our simple calendar form, and everything else should be the same, except I spelled traveler with 2 L's instead of 1 L, didn't I? I'm going to have to fix that. But this should work on my form if I go back and change that field name. So we'll go back into our form. And I named that with two L's, didn't I? I have to name it with one L. All right, this is going to cause some agitation in form. So in the form, so we are going to have to go to the form controls tab of the form because my old field traveler has been replaced by traveler. And so I'm going to have to delete this field. I note this a lot when I am looking on some of your systems and you are trying to troubleshoot something that's going on in a form. And I open up the form, and in a production environment, I often see something I do not want to see, which is a field that has edit, delete, and remap at the end of it, because that tells me that field has been marked for deletion, but has never been deleted. And while we often hope that having those undeleted fields in your form are not troublesome, they occasionally are. So in a production environment, I really should never see this. This field should be gone. So when I look at your form controls tab, what I should see are only the actual controls that you have on your form. Now, in your staging environment, if things are a little messy, or your dev environment where things are expected to be messy, no big deal. But in a production environment, I should see cleanliness here when it comes to fields that have been marked for deletion. Before you import into production, you should ensure that all fields marked for deletion have been deleted and appropriately remapped if necessary. And that way, whenever you do your import runs smoothly. So we should be good there. I am going to have to do a set form data. So on display, actually, I can just do it for, actually, I don't even have to do that. I can go to my form. I can go to my color field. No, I can't do that. I'm going to have different users. Okay, we're going to have to go to the traveler field. We're going to have to make it an event field. And let's update my form. And then we will have to go to my traveler field event, add an action, and I need to set the color to business rules. Webinar colors. And that should automatically set my color when my form runs. Let us update and run our form. And I will set the submitter to Diana. And we'll just call the event name Diana's event. And we'll set the time to, oh, it's already July. I will set it to 9 a.m. on July 1st to 2 o'clock p.m. on July 1st. So when I chose Diana, it automatically picked the blanched almond. So I know my business rule is working and I can go ahead and submit. So it looks like we're fine on our form. I'm going to need a couple of different instances. So we'll go with Barb this time. And we'll call it Barb's event. And we'll start this on July 2nd at 12 p.m. and we'll end it on July 2nd at 1 p.m. And we've got our color set automatically. And let's do one more. And we'll do one for Rick. We'll call it Rick's event. And let's say that that was on Tuesday at 2, and it'll end at 5. We'll submit that. So now I've got 3 form instances that I can now begin to query via my knowledge view. So let's create a simple calendar K-view. So we'll create new knowledge view, and we'll call it the event calendar. We'll say OK to that. So we'll go through here tab by tab and we'll do our configuration. So on the properties tab, obviously I'm going to need to associate this K-view with the simple calendar K-view form because that's the data that I want to return. On the configure tab, I'm going to want to change displayed in grid to calendar in this case so that we can display the calendar. Now, for all of my options, since I'm going to assume that this is one that's displayed to end users, I really don't need to show anything but form instances, so I can turn all of the other stuff off. Note there's one thing that I did not set back on the configure tab. I did not use the process director 6 style. Normally, I would check this, creating a new knowledge view, simply because I think it's a better style to use. I did not set it here. Probably should, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because our knowledge view results are going to be displayed in a calendar, not displayed in a grid. So I don't think this is as important, but it's something to think about while you're configuring. Again, here I only want to show form instances. I think we're fine there. And then now I want to go to my columns tab. So for the name, I actually want this to not be the name of the object. I mean, it could be, but I'm not going to show this in a grid. So I think I'm more interested in showing the event name from the form field here. So I would reset the name column to the event field. I have not updated my knowledge view, even though I did set the form. You got to update the knowledge view if you want to use these form fields because it is not associated until you update it. The change I made on the properties tab to associate the form with this knowledge view, you have to update the knowledge view before that works. And that's why a second ago, we saw it wanted a form definition name and then a form field name. Now that I've updated the knowledge view, that property configuration that I made to do the association to the simple calendar form has now taken effect. So when I pick form field, it only shows me the form field. So I do want the event name. So just a little weirdness about how knowledge views work. The first column in a knowledge view, if you're seeing it in a grid, is always the clickable column. Generally, what we show in that column is the form instance name most of the time because we're returning form instances. So that is the default. So I've changed that here because I'm not really interested in looking at this knowledge view in a grid. I want to see the calendar. So I really only need my calendar items, and I don't really need to worry about what column is clickable, like, the first column. So just something to keep in mind. This calendar K-view is going to work a little bit differently than the normal knowledge view. But put a pin in that. We'll come back to that in a second, if I can remember. We have start. So Once again, we're going to want to set this. This is all going to be form fields, by the way. So we have our start time for our start field. We have our end field, which is going to use our end time form field. So we're set for that. And then we're going to go with color, and we'll use our color field there. And, I might want to concatenate this and event name for reasons that will be obvious in a second, but we'll come back to that. I don't need this last column here. So great. I have the columns I need. So all I really need to do now is go into my calendar, and let's say I want to see the whole week, and I want the name as the subject, the start for the start date, the end for the end date, color for color, and I should be able to update and run and see magical things. So I do, in fact, see all of my events. Here's Rick's event, Diana's event, and Barb's event. It's as simple as this, really, if you want to set up a calendar K-view. Now, because I did not put show in grid, it is not going to give me access to the grid. It is only going to show me the calendar because I specifically chose calendar. And you want to do that if you want to show something like this. I don't like that it just says Barb's event, Diana's event, and Rick's event. That is good enough for now. And, maybe if it was like, the customer success committee meeting, if that was the event name, it would be fine. There's no rhyme or reason as to why the colors are what they are because we're setting the colors based on the user. That's not obvious from how we have it set up here, other than the fact that it's Rick's event, Diana's event, and Barb's event. So there are some things that you're going to need to think about, like how am I going to set the colors? Why do I want to set, a specific color for a specific event? I've done it based on who submitted it because that's one of the most common ways of doing it. That may not be the way that you want to do it for your system. You may have some other way of setting up colors. So I'll leave that to you to figure out. The names, these are bad names. Diana's event, Barb's event, they should probably be a little more descriptive. What I might want to do is concatenate this name so that it includes the user who submitted it. I think I made a mistake calling it Rick's, Diana's, and Barb's event because that tells us what user it is. I think in the real world, it wouldn't work that way. So what I might want to do on my calendar for my name column, instead of just using the event name form field, I might need to concatenate this as a value. So, I'd probably want to make this a string, and I would do something like event name submitted by traveler with one L. I would make that my event name. So this gives me a little bit more information. Rick's event submitted by Rick Robb. And in fact, if I wanted to come over here and not call it Rick's event, I could call it CS committee meeting. Great. Now I can refresh this. And it's the CS committee meeting submitted by Rick Robb. And that probably gives me a better set of naming conventions for my calendar K-view. Again, the calendar K-view is always a click through knowledge view. So it still clicks through. It still gives me my original form instance, whichever one it is that I click on. So it works exactly the way that a regular knowledge view works. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is this name field is going to be the clickable field, as I said earlier. Not a big concern for us because we have this set to knowledge view results calendar. Now, the drawback to setting this is that I can't actually see my source data. I mean, yes, I can click on a calendar event and I can see my original form, but I can only see the data in the calendar. So you do get the convenience of just displaying the calendar like this in the knowledge view results property, with the drawback of not being able to see all of the data. So when you have this set to displayed in grid, which is of course the default, if I have the calendar tab configured, so it knows what fields to show me in my calendar tab, then having it set to display in grid will show me my my calendar icon up here at the top. So unlike the export to Excel or export to CSV icons where you have to click the checkbox to make those icons appear, you don't have to do it for a calendar knowledge view. Once you configure the calendar tab, it knows that you have fields that you want to show in a calendar, so it's automatically going to give you your calendar icon. Now, the drawback, of course, is you've chosen to display the knowledge view as a grid. So when people open up the knowledge view, even though it says event calendar, they're not seeing a calendar. They're seeing the actual event. And of course, it works just like any other knowledge view, but they're seeing the list of events. If they actually want to see the calendar, they have to go up and click on the calendar view to see the calendar. And once the calendar view is displayed, then they get the icon to go back to view it in the grid. So great. The trouble is that I don't get that same flexibility. So it is a trade-off, depending on what you want your user to see. If I set it back to calendar, okay, cool. I get a calendar and I mean, I guess I can refresh it, but I do not have a icon that will take me back to show it in a grid. So I can't actually go back and see a list of all of, in this case, form instances from which these calendar events are done. That might be fine for you. And generally, I think whenever you are showing this to end users, you probably only want to show them the calendar. If you're trying to do some troubleshooting, though, just looking at the calendar often isn't helpful. So you are probably going to have to go back in if you have to do any troubleshooting or even while you're doing developing. You're probably going to want to set it to calendar last. You're probably going to want to keep it set to default to grid initially, at least during the development cycle, so that you can, swap back and forth between the data you're seeing and how it appears in the calendar. And then ultimately, before you release it to your end users, you'll go back to the configure tab and reset this back to calendar so that it runs automatically in calendar view. And of course, your end users, that's probably all that you want them to see. All right, well, I don't really have much else to tell you about this single function. I was able to drag it out for about an hour and a half, though. and we had plenty of time to rebuild stuff from scratch. So I think this is a perfect time to end. Have a great holiday and a great week next week. I certainly will, because I'll be on vacation, and I will look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Until then, so long.